Guys, welcome to the Superhero Cut Show where we're talking all things Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. It's your boy CV Hayes. Please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you know when we post. So today I'm here to talk about Agatha All Along, episode 3 breakdown. Let's get right into it. Let's go. This episode opens with all of the witches walking on the road, and the teen is excited that he is on the road, and all of them are just very interested because this is something that they've always heard of, and like I can't believe we're here, except Agatha because she's been on the road. Mrs. Hart is mad because she feels like she got tricked to go down this road. And, Jen and Alice address that, those things that were chasing after Agatha. And Agatha tries to, ignore that whole thing. And she just keeps on just trying to walk. They then say, what is after Agatha is now after them now that they're all in the same coven. So now they're all tied in together. And Mrs. Hart is then just yapping. I mean, she yapped pretty much this whole episode. And then Jen, brought up the fact that Mrs. Hart has no magic at all. And they were kind of questioning, how she even is in this coven. We then see Lilia say that they're going to face their scariest nightmares on this road. Agatha then says, that the road will test them and their knowledge of the craft, and basically one test for each skill. Because if you guys remember, each witch that Agatha picked has a certain special thing about them. They then ask how they can showcase their skill if they don't have any powers, and the teen says that they can do analog magic, which basically isn't like magic where I can move my fingers around, but it's more of a labor intensive magic. They didn't ask for the name of the teen, and he says his name again. As it happened in the first two episodes, no one can understand or hear his name. Lilia says that someone put a sigil on him. Now, a sigil is a painted sign with magical power, and the teen does not know that this sigil is over his lips. And they look at Agatha, and Agatha says, that she not put that spell on him. And she thought it was a raggedy spell, right? And that they can crack him open later and find out who he is. And from what I think that Agatha Loki thinks that this is her son. That's what I think. But we all know that he's not. Spoiler alert, I think he's Wiccan, so that's what I believe. He's the son of Wanda Maximoff. He just got to grow up a little bit. Agatha then, just motivates the team of like this is what you can earn back if we complete the road. And while she's doing that, she ends up losing Mrs. Hart. Now, Mrs. Hart is trying to find a way out, and she basically looks like she basically sits down and she puts her bag down, and her bag starts to sink in dirt, and the dirt basically took her pocketbook. And then Mrs. Hart started to sink in the dirt herself. Alice ends up pulling her out, and just Mrs. Hart is just super scared. She has no idea of what's happening. Agatha then tells them to not step off of the road, and that was why she got into that sinking dirt because she stepped off of the road. Jen then sees a house in the distance on a beach. They then all walk towards this big house on the beach. And Mrs. Hart, being the sweet lady she is, she rings the doorbell, but Agatha just walks right in the house. When they walk in, they all have new outfits, fitting this, middle-aged classy vibe. Agatha is then holding on to and so then Agatha ends up trying to like see if like they can leave, and the door's not opening. She's not able to push up anything. They're locked in here. We then see the teen grab a card, and the card says the Witch's Road invites them to the first trial. They also are given some type of riddle. Okay, so it's kind of building up this idea that this time is going to be very interesting. Then we end up seeing that Mrs. Hart points out that there was a bottle of wine that appeared on the table, and they all said this, and they all said that they were going to drink the wine because this is a part of their trial. Jen then tells the teen, as he's trying to find a corkscrew, to go to watch his back with Agatha. Jen then tells the teen that Agatha traded her child for the Darkhold. Jen also said that her son could be an agent of Mephisto as well. Now, this is big news because if you were here for the WandaVision stuff, Mephisto was mentioned so many times, and the dude never popped up. So it's very interesting that they're mentioning him now. And we obviously saw Agatha's son's bedroom in Agatha All Along episode 1. That her son is Nicholas Scratch, who also is a sorcerer. So maybe we will see him in the next coming episodes, which will also be super interesting. The teen then looks scared after hearing about all that, and Mrs. Hart takes a drink of wine. Okay, and we then see a 30-minute timer beep after the wine is drunk. Then they all take a drink of wine, and Mrs. Hart, she even takes a second cup of wine, and Agatha has yet to drink her wine. And we also hear weird music playing, showing that something odd is going to happen. Agatha then pours her wine onto like a plant, and she does not drink it at all. But here's the thing: we also see the glass refill, which is because Agatha won't drink it, because all of the witches in the coven have to drink this wine so they can, start this trial that they're in. The teen then says something happened to him at 13 years old when he was talking to Alice. I'm not sure what that is, and my thought of that is, is that maybe it's tied to some Wanda Vision stuff that happened, maybe because we all think that is Wiccan. They then, all get into a conversation about magic, and we see Mrs. Hart's face swell up, and everyone is shocked. And they then find out, all like everyone who drunk it, because all of their faces swelled up. And Agatha then tries to run away again, but the door doesn't open because they're in the trial. Then their faces turn back to normal. But the issue is that with the poison that they took, that is just the start of it. So they're going to deal with hallucinations and certain pains and all of this other stuff. And when Agatha tries to escape again, everyone finds out that she did not drink her wine. But Agatha finally, takes the wine and drinks it, and then we see Mrs. Hart hallucinating her fear, which is, Wanda doing something, and she ends up fainting. Okay, and Agatha then says, "Okay, it's time to make an antidote." Then they all try to find the ingredients for Jen to make the antidote. Then we see Lilia and Agatha trying to find, the certain ingredients for them for the potion that they're making. And Lilia says out of nowhere, try to save Agatha, which is Lilia pointing to some type of prophecy about what's going to, come across to them in the future, which is very interesting. We also see Alice and the team trying to find certain oils for the potion, but we also see Alice enter her hallucination. And we also see Jen turn on the running water to start the potion, but she ends up entering her past memory. And it's the same with Lilia as well. She enters one. And so here's what we see. We see Alice's mom pop up. We also see some guy that Jen is afraid of, and he looks very angry at her. And Lilia walks and sees this little girl speaking to her in Italian. Okay. And then Lilia follows that girl, and we see like a jacked up room with like vines on the walls. And we then see Alice trying to talk to her mom, and her mom tells her that her grandmom died and that she can feel the death of her grandmother. We then see Alice's mom basically tell her that it's her turn to die, and then we end up going to this scene with Lilia where she is looking at a zombie version of someone, and then we end up seeing death. Like, I'm talking about Thanos' death, okay, which is nuts that we finally see death in the MCU. We also see Jen getting literally drowned, like the guy that was facing Jen in the kitchen. He grabbed the back of her neck and started to drown her in the sink. And then Alice's mom starts yelling at her. And we see Jen, Alice, and Lilia all leave their hallucinations at the same time. And after that, they end up finding their ingredients. But now it looks like the house is underwater. And they also grab, so what they end up doing is they grab Mrs. Hart and they put her on the table in the kitchen area. And they all start to add the elements. And then we see the sink start to glow. And then they end up, pulling strands out of their head. But while they're doing that, Agatha hears a baby cry. Okay, Agatha walks to the noise, and there's a baby carriage, and in the baby carriage, the dark hold is in it. Agatha then lays on the floor and starts to cry, and this is giving some type of idea that she sacrificed her son, but it might be more complicated than that. Um, because there's a rumor going around that her and Rhea, that Agatha and Rhea were married, and that the son that they had, Agatha or Rio apparent, or the rumors that Rio gave away the son and Rio got the dark hole first, but Agatha ended up taking it from her in anger. That's what the rumor is, but I'm not sure how true that is. We'll just have to see, when we get deeper into this show and story. But Jen then says, and Jen freaks out because the potion isn't working because they're missing something. And she's like, like, this guy stole my magic. If this guy didn't steal my magic, I would have been able to figure out everything. And Agatha just gives her some encouragement. and they ended up finding what they needed. They needed the teen's blood, so they end up cutting his hand open, and his blood goes into the potion, and makes it right. They then drink the potion, and now they're back to normal. But then they get Mrs. Hart to drink because the time was, running out. And when Miss Hart drank that juice, whatever, the freaking potion, the oven opens up, and the oven is the exit out of the house. And basically, the house then starts to flood, and they start going through the oven. They lift Mrs. Hart, and they get through, and they all escape, and it all seems all fine and happy. But then we find out that Mrs. Hart is dead, and the episode ends. Now, how did Mrs. Hart die? I'm totally not sure. Maybe she died from the potion. That's kind of what I am. I think she probably died from the potion because she's not a witch, and maybe that affected her body in a way. But I'm not entirely sure. But this episode was. I think that this was the strongest episode so far. I think digging into the past of these witches was very interesting because we are seeing some of their origins in this, and these witches are very old, so they're really tied to some old times, so I'm really excited to see more about the origins of these people, and just to see more about the road and magic. And I hope that they get their magic back quickly, because I kind of want to see some action, man. It's a lot of lore stuff, and which I love, but I want to see some magic going on. So that's the breakdown of Agatha episode 3. Please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell, and peace out.